before the GST Council. And in this GST Council, therefore, I must upfront tell you that while there were a lot of issues on which the Fitment Committee and the Legal Committee had worked and readied quite a few agenda, considering that we were meeting only for half a day, some agenda were taken up, considerable number for today. But even as we concluded today, we acknowledged the fact that we have ready agenda points which we could not take up today for want of time, which we'll take up in the next meeting. And therefore, it was also decided, keeping in mind one or two matters of urgency, which the states also had in their mind, to hold a GST meeting at the earliest after today, which will be sometime post the budget session, maybe sometime middle of August, before the end of August is when the next meeting will happen, where the agenda which we couldn't complete today it wasn't tabled also, but just to let you know that there was enough agenda. Some of them got to be discussed today, and the rest which could not be put on the agenda list itself will be carried on for the next meeting. But today, the 53rd GST Council meeting has actually taken a lot of decisions on trade facilitation, easing compliance burden, and giving relief to taxpayers in terms of compliance easing out. So this will benefit the traders, MSMEs, and taxpayers, is my strong view. I will just flag those issues and not get into the details. Later on, you can always ask us the question and we'll go about. First one is that there was a decision taken today and the GST Council recommended waiving interest and penalties for demand notices that have been issued under Section 73 of the GST Act. What are the items which are under Section 73? Cases not involving fraud, suppression, or misstatements. So, for all those notices which were issued under Section 73, for the fiscal years 2017-18, 18-19, and 19-20, the Council has recommended waiving interest and penalties on the demand notices which have been served. And this will be applicable in cases where the taxpayer pays the full amount of tax demanded in the notice by 31/3/2025. So notices were issued for those 3 financial years under Section 73 of the CGST Act. So if the taxpayer comes forward to pay the total amount before 31st March 2025, he shall not have to pay the interest or the penalties which have been normally put on them. So that relief has been given. Again, the Council has recommended, I'm going to the next item. Council has recommended that the time limit to avail input tax credit in respect of any invoice or debit note under Section 16(4) of the CGST Act through any GSTR 3B return filed up to 30/11/2021 for the financial years 17-18, 18-19, 19-20, and 2021 may be deemed to be 30/11/2021. So, for the same requisite amendment, retrospectively with effect from 1st July 2017, the Council has made a recommendation. Moving to the next item. In order to reduce government litigation, the Council has recommended a monetary limit of 20 lakh for GST Appellate Tribunal, 1 crore for High Court, and 2 crore for Supreme Court for filing of appeals. filing of appeals by the department before these legal fora. Specific amounts, I repeat, the council's recommended amounts, recommended monetary limits are 20 lakh for GST Appellate Tribunal, 1 crore for High Court, and 2 crore for Supreme Court for filing of appeals by the department. So I go to the next one. Council has also recommended that the maximum amount for pre-deposit, maximum amount of pre-deposit for filing appeal before the appellate authority shall be reduced from 25 crores CGST and 25 crores SGST to 20 crores CGST. CGST is 25 crore, comes to 20. SGST is 25 crore, comes to 20 crore. And that is the maximum amount of pre-deposit for filing appeals before the appellate authority. Also, the pre-deposit for filing of appeal before the appellate tribunal will be reduced from 20% with a maximum amount of 50 crores CGST and 50 crores SGST to 10% with a maximum amount of 20 crores CGST and rupees 20 crore SGST. So that is a recommendation. There are one or two which I am not stating it here for want of time, but the complete decisions will be sent to you by mail. Council has also decided and recommended that amending the provisions of CGST Act to provide that the 3-month period for filing appeals in the GST Appellate Tribunal will start from a day which shall be notified by the government. So, the President of the Tribunal has assumed office, and the said period for filing filing appeal by the taxpayers will expire on 5th August 2024. But there is a need that we need to give an extension, so we've come up with this decision. The next one I'm moving over to is, in order to help small taxpayers, the Council recommended extending the time limit to furnish the detail and the returns in the form GSTR 4 from 30th April at present. At the moment it is 30th April. The Council has recommended that it be extended to 30th June. And this is for GSTR 4, those returns which have to be filed. This will apply for returns for the financial year 2024-25 onwards. The next one I'm moving on to, the Council has recommended requisite amendment in the CGST rules to provide that interest would not be charged on an amount which is available in the electronic cash ledger on the due date of filing the GSTR 3B return and is debited while filing the said return. This will ease interest burden on the taxpayer. I'm moving to the next decision, which is again taxpayer friendly. The Council has recommended again insertion of a functionality by way of Form GSTR 1A, which would allow a taxpayer to add any particulars of current tax period which he may have missed out on in reporting in the GSTR 1. So if he missed out on reporting in GSTR 1, there shall now be a form called GSTR 1A in which he'll be able to do that for the current tax period or to amend any particulars which are already declared in GSTR 1 for the current tax period before filing GSTR 3B return for the current tax period. So one gets filed. If there's a missed out fact or you've done some error, you can correct it in the GSTR 1A. You can't, of course, go back. For the current tax period is what is being said. Then there is going to be a rolling out of biometric-based Aadhaar authentication in an all-India basis. You know that we ran a pilot in Gujarat, also a pilot in Puducherry. There have been very good inputs coming out of it. So this will help us to combat fraudulent input tax credit claims made through fake invoices. In the cases where the applicant had opted for Aadhaar authentication and where the case has been identified on the basis of data analytics and risk parameters on the system, these have been tried in the GST Suvidha Kendras, and this will be taken up on an all-India basis. So the GST Council has today recommended to roll out the biometric-based Aadhaar authentication of registration of applicants on an all-India basis in a phased manner. So if these are matters which came through the legal committee, there were a couple of clarifications issued by the Fitment committee. They've issued quite a few, but I'm highlighting one or two. Council recommended to prescribe a uniform rate of 12% on all milk cans, meaning steel, iron, aluminium, which are irrespective of the use. They are called milk cans, but wherever they are used, that will be the rate applicable, so that no disputes arise out of it. They have a standard shape, so that will determine what is a milk can and what is not. Then Council also recommended to prescribe a uniform GST rate of 12% on all carton boxes and cases of both corrugated and non-corrugated paper or paper board. This will in particular help the apple growers of Himachal Pradesh, the apple growers of J&K, whose request it has been for quite some time. The Fitment committee has also recommended it now. There are details about HSN codes on this matter, but simple step is corrugated, non-corrugated, carton boxes made of paper or corrugated paper, non-corrugated paper or paper board will all benefit from this. Council also has clarified and recommended that the clarification be put out on that all types of sprinklers, including fire water sprinklers, will attract 12% GST, and to regularize the past practice on an as is where is basis. Coming to the next point of solar cookers, Council recommended to prescribe 12% on all solar cookers, whether it has single or dual energy source. On services, there are just 2 points which I'll highlight to you. Services provided by Indian Railways to the common man, sale of platform tickets, facility of retiring rooms, waiting rooms, cloakroom services, battery operated car services are being exempted from GST. Further, intra-railway supplies are also being exempted. The other, which is very important, service by way of hostel accommodation is presently not exempt, which are being provided for students if they are outside of educational institutions. Am I right? If they are within an educational institution, they are already exempt. Please let there be clarity. hostels which are for students which are within a resident which are within an educational institutions are already exempt. Now, hostels which are for students but outside of an educational institutions are also getting exempt. But listen to this, please. The measure of relief for students and working professionals, Council has recommended to exempt accommodation services having a value of supply up to 20,000 per person per month. So it can be hostels run by Samaj, so that poor people belonging to their Samaj come there, stay there for 20,000 rupees per person per month. They will not be worried about GST at all. The condition, of course, is those provided these services are supplied for a minimum continuous period of 90 days. So it's not like, I don't want to take the name of branded names. It's not as if tourists who come and stay for 3-4 days and go away, no GST. No. It is meant for students, and therefore if they come and 90 continuous days if they stay, yes, they're exempt. Up to 20,000 rupees per person per month. So hostels run for people who come from rural areas and stay in some hostel which is run by either communities or social welfare organizations, not of the government, even private. They are not going to be touched by GST, provided it is 20,000 per person per month, and provided that is continuously occupied by that person for 90 days at least. I've just highlighted a few points, both from the legal and fitment committees. More can be answered even as you ask questions. There were quite a few new ministers. Was there a list of the committees? Some committees have had newer ministers taking charge in the place of ministers who were earlier there. As we go along, I'll mention it. Of immediate interest will be the Rate Rationalization Committee, for which the Deputy Chief Minister of Bihar, Samrat Chaudhary, has been given charge.
Ma'am,
That's fine.
should we open the floor for questions now? I'll request all of you to begin, and as and when you ask your question, please specify your name and organization. I begin in the center, 124. Ma'am, 124, the first question.
Ma'am, good evening. Shishir from Hindu Business Line. My question is about this online gaming, casinos and horse racing, because in the last meeting, there was a recommendation that it will be reviewed after 6 months, the progress. So has there any decision taken, because so many notices have been issued to companies? So is there any thing?
For discussion, nor was it taken today. It wasn't on the agenda also. It wasn't on the agenda. It didn't come for discussion. No, it wasn't taken up.
To the left, 265.
Hello, ma'am. Good evening. Ma'am, this is regarding the, in terms of the appellate tribunal, you had mentioned that 5th of August would be the date of filing, the extended date of filing. Just to clarify the operationality of the appellate tribunals, we understand that the principal bench has a head appointed, but in terms of the operationality of the other benches, could we get some clarity? Like the day?
Revenue Secretary is going to sit with the one of the judges of the Supreme Court and the committee, which otherwise is the competent authority to choose members who will be in various benches. That meeting is yet to take place. It will happen soon, and the moment that is done, people will be appointed, and then it can all activate.
266 next to the left, ma'am.
राजीव हूँ दैनिक जागरण से। मेरा सवाल है कि जो आधार ऑथेंटिकेशन के लिए जो आपने नियम लाया है, तो ये जो पायलट प्रोजेक्ट होगा गुजरात और पुडुचेरी में, ये तो फर्स्ट की ये कब से लागू होगा? दूसरी बात, अभी जो जीएसटीएन पे जाकर रजिस्ट्रेशन कराना होता है तो वो ऑनलाइन भी हो जाता है, अगर तो अब क्या फिजिकल वेरिफिकेशन उनको कराना होगा?
नहीं,
और
ऑनलाइन में जो वेरिफिकेशन हो रही है ठीक हो रही है, होने दो, उसका कोई बदलाव नहीं कर रहे हैं हम, वो चालू रहेगा। मगर ये सुविधा स्टेशन जो सर्विस सेंटर बनता है, उसमें जा करके इकट्ठा सभी जो रिक्वायरमेंट है, आधार है, आपके बायोमेट्रिक वेरिफिकेशन है, आपके पेपर्स है, सब इकट्ठा देने में गुजरात में पायलट प्रोजेक्ट का एक्सपीरियंस बेस करते हुए मैं बोल रही हूं, in a matter of 15-20 minutes all paperwork is done and registration हो जाता है नया कंपनियों का। ऑनलाइन में करने के बाद बोर्ड्स में भी बाद में जब वेरिफिकेशन सही नहीं हुआ या कुछ गड़बड़ है, बायोमेट्रिक ठीक से नहीं हुआ, फिर यो फिजिकली वेरीफाई करने के लिए आप जा रही हो। मगर ये सुविधा पोर्टल के सुविधा सेंटर के द्वारा जो होता है, सब एक ही जगह इकट्ठा 15-20 मिनट्स के अंदर हो जाता है, फिर उसमें फिजिकल वेरिफिकेशन का आवश्यकता नहीं होता। सो एवरीथिंग हैपन्स इमीडिएटली, ज्यादा टाइम ना खर्च करते हुए, अनलेस बियॉन्ड दैट वेरिफिकेशन कुछ और डेटा मिसमैच होता है तो दोबारा उनसे ताल्लुक रखना पड़ता। सो इट एक्चुअली in fact in the meeting today, आंध्र प्रदेश का मिनिस्टर जो नया आया है, उनका ये कहना था कि 2-3 लेवल पर स्टडी करने के बाद उनका एक्सपीरियंस ये दिखाता है कि ऐसे फिजिकली आकर वेरीफाई करके करने वाले के कारण फेक रजिस्ट्रेशन कम हो रही है। गुजरात का भी एक्सपीरियंस वही प्रूव करता है कि once this kind of a verification with biometric authentication happens, fake companies का registration बिल्कुल नहीं होता। इसीलिए ये मेथड अभी पायलट टेस्ट के द्वारा और आंध्रा के स्टडी के द्वारा हमें ये जानकारी मिल रही है कि दिस विल बी फिजिकल वेरिफिकेशन और फेकरी का हम कम कर सकते हैं।
नहीं, एक सवाल
272
जो
next.
कैंपस आउटसाइड कैंपस को जो एग्जाम्पशन मिलेगा जीएसटी से, उससे स्टूडेंट्स को क्या फायदा होगा? कुछ
बिल्कुल स्टूडेंट्स का फायदा होगा, क्योंकि कम्युनिटीज बहुत सारे स्टेट्स में उनके रूरल बच्चे के लिए सुविधाजनक सस्ते में हॉस्टल्स दे रहे हैं। हर एजुकेशन इंस्टीट्यूशन में रेजिडेंशियल फैसिलिटी नहीं रहता, इसीलिए रूरल एरिया से जो बच्चे सिटीज में आकर पढ़ने के लिए आते हैं, उनके लिए सस्ते में जब अकोमोडेशन मिलता है और उसके ऊपर जीएसटी जब नहीं है, उनको फेवरेबली देखना चाहिए। बच्चों का सुविधा ही है वो।
Good evening.
What? When will be the rollout of this? I already said that it will happen in a phased manner all over the country. From now.
Good evening, ma'am. This is Ruchi Bhatia from Bloomberg News. I have two quick questions. One on the rate rationalization GOM. By when will the new GOM with the new members be able to submit their report? And the second question on, you also met the state finance ministers for pre-budget consultations. Can you throw some light on some of the key recommendations if you can?
See, the rate rationalization group of ministers, since the time it was constituted, has been working. It's not as if it never worked. So quite a lot of substantial work has happened. Now, because you have a new deputy chief minister taking charge of it, I would want to give him that time for him to understand through his team as to how far they have gone. What was decided in the council today was, अगले बार जब we meet, ग्रुप ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स, वो नया डेप्यूटी चीफ मिनिस्टर जो चेयर है अभी, वो काउंसिल को ये रिपोर्ट पेश करें कि स्टेटस क्या है, अभी कितना क्या काम हुआ है, रेशनलाइजेशन के काम में कितने आगे बढ़ चुके हैं और काम क्या बचा हुआ है। ऐसे करके आज का स्टेटस विस्तार से अगले मीटिंग में देने के लिए डिसीजन लिया गया। उस मीटिंग में ये भी करेंगे, हम रेशनलाइजेशन के ऊपर चर्चा शुरू करेंगे। ये नहीं है कि उसी मीटिंग में रेशनलाइजेशन का सभी डिसीजन हो जाएगा, नहीं, क्योंकि पहले बार जीओएम के द्वारा एक प्रेजेंटेशन होगा, चाहे वो रिपोर्ट ड्राफ्ट है, फर्स्ट ड्राफ्ट है या फाइनल ड्राफ्ट है, वो मुझे मालूम नहीं, वो ग्रुप ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स को मालूम, वो पेश करेंगे, उसके ऊपर चर्चा होगा। सो वील स्टार्ट द डिस्कशन ऑन रेट rationalization, and that committee will give us a status of where the rationalization work has progressed, how far it has progressed, what has been achieved in it till now, how much more they will have to do. So essentially in the next meeting we start that discussion.
One,
Yes. It was a good discussion. A lot of every minister has given their speech in written also. Northeast ministers were of the view that DONER, Department of Northeast Affairs, will have to work together with them so that they get more resources for their use. State-specific suggestions were there for more infrastructure. This was promised earlier. Would you want to continue to do it, or will you do it now? You know, things like that. And also from the point of view of devolution, the discussion which has to happen in the Finance Commission, while all ministers agree it has to happen in the Finance Commission, they mentioned that also, that it has to be taken up with the Finance Commission. Broadly.
127 next.
Just want to let you know that there are 11 new ministers in the GST Council. 11. So Andhra Pradesh has a new minister, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Haryana, Madhya Pradesh, Mizoram, Odisha, Rajasthan, Sikkim, Telangana and Tripura. 11 states have new ministers.
127 to the left.
मैम तरुण शर्मा फ्रॉम जी बिजनेस। मैम आपने ये तो क्लैरिफाई कर दिया कि ऑनलाइन गेमिंग पे कोई आज डिस्कशन नहीं हुआ, लेकिन मैम कंफ्यूजन जो है वो सेक्शन 11A को CGST एक्ट जो इंसर्शन है, जिसमें आपने कहा कि हमारे पास पावर होनी चाहिए, हमने जो पेनल्टीज लगाई हैं उनको लेविड करने की और हटाने की, तो मैम इस पे आप क्लैरिफाई कर पाएंगे?
नहीं, आज मुझे ऑनलाइन गेम के ऊपर कोई कुछ कहना नहीं है।
मैम इस पे ये सेक्शन 11A को CGST एक्ट में इंसर्शन का क्या मीनिंग होगा?
You can go on asking me any number of questions on it. Since in the council today we didn't discuss anything, I am not empowered to say anything on it.
मैम सेकंड
Next question 56.
मैम
आलोक प्रियदर्शी फ्रॉम CNBC आवाज। मैम इंडस्ट्री की एक मांग थी फर्टिलाइजर पर GST एग्जाम करने को लेकर, फिटमेंट कमेटी से शायद प्रपोजल गया था, तो क्या रीजन रहा फर्टिलाइजर पर जो GST एग्जाम करने की मांग थी नहीं होने की? क्या इसको आपने ये इसके ऊपर क्या डिसीजन हुआ है?
Do you want to talk?
इसके ऊपर में जो निर्णय काउंसिल ने किया है वो उससे, क्योंकि ये एक बड़ा मुद्दा है, तो इसके ऊपर में जो GOM रिकॉन्स्टिट्यूट किया है उसको काउंसिल ने रेफर किया है। और जो आपने 11A का जैसे FM ने कहा, ये पहले से जो हम कई सारे केसेस में एज इज वेरियस बेसिस पे हम ऑलरेडी रेगुलराइज कर रहे थे, इसका संबंध उससे है, इसका ऑनलाइन गेमिंग से कोई ताल्लुक डायरेक्टली नहीं, एज इज वेरियस बेसिस पे जो हम एग्जेम्प्ट करते हैं उससे है।
अगला सवाल 124 सेंटर में मैम।
मैम मैं पीयूष पांडे हूँ TV9 भारतवर्ष से। आपने जो लिटिगेशन के लिए सीमा तय की है, बेसिकली ट्राइब्यूनल, हाई कोर्ट और सुप्रीम कोर्ट के लिए, इससे इतर जो नीचे के मसले होंगे वो किस तरह से निपटाए जाएंगे? क्या मीडिएशन से या कोई और तरीका होगा?
इससे इतर आपका क्या प्रश्न? आपका कुछ 20 लाख से नीचे यदि होगा तो हम उसमें अपील में नहीं जाएंगे, तो वो कमिश्नर अपील के लेवल पे जो भी निर्णय हो जाएगा उसको सरकार मान लेगी, जब तक कि वो कोई पॉलिसी रिलेटेड मेजर नहीं। तो उसमें हम अपील नहीं करेंगे आगे। टैक्स पेयर तो अपील कर सकता है, यदि वो संतुष्ट नहीं है तो वो अपील कर सकता है। उसी प्रकार से हाई कोर्ट के लेवल पे, अगर ट्राइब्यूनल के लेवल पे कोई निर्णय हो जाता है जो कि 1 करोड़ से कम राशि का है, तो गवर्नमेंट उसमें अपील में नहीं जाएगी, टैक्स पेयर उसमें अपील में जा सकता है।
ये क्या हमारे लिए सरकार
Number 16 to the left.
Ma'am, Meghna Mittal from Money Control. The Petroleum Minister recently said that they will work towards bringing fuel under GST. What is your view? Is it an uphill task? Could there be a discussion in the coming meetings?
See, today we didn't discuss about it, but I'm still answering your question only to say that petrol and diesel, even when GST was implemented, I distinctly remember Senior Minister then, Shri Arun Jaitley, talking about it, that the proviso exists already in the Act, meaning GST, petrol and diesel can be handled, for which the law has been already embedded. So what is pending is, once the states agree, in the council they have to decide what will be the rate of taxation. Once that decision is taken, it will be put into the act. So the indication or the intent of this central government, even as the GST was implemented, was eventually sometime petrol and diesel can be brought into the GST. Then we didn't have to go and amend the law and everything else. The provision has already been made that it can be brought into GST. The one and only decision which is therefore expected is for the states to agree and come into the GST Council and then decide what rate they will agree on. So at the moment, the intention of the GST as it was brought in by Shri Arun Jaitley is to have the petrol and diesel in GST. It is up to the states now to say, all right, we'll all come together and get into GST, therefore come into the council and then decide on what will be the rate. So the intent of the central government and intent of my late predecessor was clear. We want the GST to include petrol and diesel, but it's up to the states.
Number 45 to the left.
Any discussion has happened which is with regard to rationalization of GST rate on co-premium insurance?
No.
Insurance co-premium.
No.
271 and then 10.
Hi, ma'am. Good evening. I'm Kriti from Informist Media.
But the point that I want to put before you is, you asked for insurance related, right? The fitment committee has received formal requests only now. So obviously it cannot be taken up in this meeting itself. They'll have to work on it and maybe comes in the next. Maybe. That's not yet they'll have to work on it.
Yeah. Hi, ma'am. Kriti from Informist Media here. So you announced exemption on railway services. Since railways are vast, the services are vast, would you be able to help us understand what kind of revenue foregoing would happen post this? Would it be minuscule, significant, and if there is an estimate figure on it?
We don't have the numbers, but I may tell you that these services were already exempt. It was only, about a year ago that we brought them on their request under the GST regime. Now we have gone back, so the revenue foregone will not be much.
264 at the back left.
To the GST rationalization only. So the discussion on the rate rationalization has been going on since 2021. So could you please share what specific items are being discussed for this? This
What
is Haris from News
specific?
18.
What specific?
Items are being discussed for rate
See,
rationalization
as
as of
I
now?
said, the committee, which is a group of ministers, will do a presentation to the council in the next meeting. Then we'll know what issues are being taken up by them, how far they've progressed, and what will be left for them to do.
We'll take the last question here, number 10.
Ma'am, I am Monica from the New Indian Express. Ma'am, a lot of companies, they have filed writ petition against the council's decision related to GST on corporate guarantee. Was that taken up in today's meeting?
So corporate guarantee here, it is being clarified that in case it is for services where or goods where whole ITC is available, the corporate guarantee will not attract a GST. So that is a major relief because most of the goods, services are taxable and they are not exempt. So they all of them will get this relief.
Okay. And also regarding this anti-profiteering, so introduction of sunset was expected in today's meeting in the anti-profiteering provisions. Was that also discussed?
Yes, that was taken up today.
Yes, and it was decided that this will be sunset. So the last date that has been fixed for this is 1st April 25. However, the cases which have already been registered, they will continue to be heard and they will be decided. The other decision taken in this regard is to shift from CCI, the Competition Commission of India, the hearing of these cases, to the principal, to the GST 80 as and when it becomes functional.
Also, sir, ma'am, I would like to know about this pre-deposit new limits. So now, if someone has already paid the extra, if someone has already paid this pre-deposit according to the previous law, now will they be eligible for the extra amount they have paid for the refund?
This is prospective.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Just one information which I want to use this opportunity because I'm before the media, and through the media I want to reassure the assessees that our intent is to make the GST assessees' life easier. We are working towards less and less compliance. I want to underline the fact on behalf of the CGST that notices are not being sent here, left, right, and center, because most often we are asked, why so many notices? Don't you know what's happening, and so on. I want to use this occasion to let you know that only 1.96% of all active tax assessees have been sent any notice from the central GST. So if there are 1,14,939 active assessees, it is only to less than 2%, 1.96% assessees, 1,14,939 assessees. Less than 2% of them have been sent notices from the central GST. I want to be clear on this. Our intention is to make it easier, simpler, less cumbersome. And sooner that we talk of more and more ease of doing business, we'll follow that. And that is proven by this data, that as of 31st December 23, only 1.96% of these assessees have been sent a notice or a notice. So not beyond that. So 1.96% of the 1,14,900 number of active taxpayers here, 58,62,886. So this 1.96 is in actual number 1,14,939. All right? Clear? 1.96 is in actual number 1,14,939. So only that many have received notice. So CGST is harassing. None of that. In a large country like this, CGST has sent only this many notices. I want to underline the fact here. Of course, states would do their own. Each state can do their own. I'm not coming on to that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Empower is a lender that focuses on students that are high potential, they're highly employable, but left out of traditional financing options. The traditional credit system, it's really based on how rich your parents were or where they were from. So we're saying, well, none of this matters. What matters is really your own future, your own decisions. We're there to fight that.
When it comes to the question of economy, which is going to benefit everybody, the politics cannot be so disruptive. Once upon a time, Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi said, if I send 1 rupee to the beneficiary, he ends up getting only 15 paisa. Adopting technology, Prime Ministers ensure that that kind of leakage doesn't happen. 1 rupee sent is 1 rupee received.
One of the most crucial ministries in Modi's cabinet, the Ministry of Finance, has been entrusted to Nirmala Sitharaman.
She is one of the top ministers in the government of India.
So only 1.5% of India's population is the tax-paying population, whereas for China this is 10% and in the US it is 43%. Ma'am, why is our tax base so small?
As long as you are earning more, you and your family are happy. But the moment you are under the tax net, you think the government is regressive.
There are states like Tamil Nadu which were protesting because they were saying that it's like penalizing the states for investing so much money into building factories when there are states which are just consuming things.
State is not building factories. What are you saying?
The top 1% of India accounted for 45% of all flights and just 6.5% of the users were responsible for 44% of all UPI transactions. Ma'am, why is the gap between the rich and the poor increasing so much? Ma'am, the Skill India report says that more than 35% of our BTech students are unemployable, 30% of our MBA students are unemployable, 60% of our ITI students are unemployable, and more than 75% of our polytechnic students are unemployable. The Finance Minister of Kerala, K.N. Balgopal, argues, he says that Kerala gets only 21 rupees against every 100 rupee that Kerala collects, but for UP this number is 46 out of 100, and for Bihar it's drastically high. Bihar gets 70 rupees out of the 100 rupee that it collects. And here's where the north-south divide narrative comes into play, ma'am. So ma'am, what is the logic behind dividing this pool of money?
I think this narrative is somewhat distorted.
Hi everybody, this is a conversation that I had with one of the most powerful women in India, who's none other than our Finance Minister Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman. In this episode, we spoke at length on what exactly are the obstacles that India faces while it is on its way to become a $7 trillion economy. Why is there rampant unemployment in India? What is the vision that BJP has for India? And most importantly, we spoke at length on why southern states like Tamil Nadu and Kerala get less money from the center as compared to northern states like UP and Bihar. So as usual, I tried my level best to ask her as many questions as possible in the limited time that we had. We did miss out on a lot of questions, but for the questions that we could ask, Nirmala ma'am was kind enough to explain everything using examples and numbers. So now it's up to you to decide whether her answers were satisfactory or not. And now on with the episode. Hello ma'am, welcome to the Indian Business Podcast, and thank you so much for giving us such an important slot in your valuable schedule, ma'am. Ma'am, the agenda for today's podcast is very simple. We want to understand the fundamental insights of great governance, which usually gets missed out by mainstream media. And I have very specific questions coming straight from the people of India. And what we seek to understand are the underlying insights behind the functioning of the government. So all throughout this episode, if you can be extremely elaborative with your answers, as simple as possible and with as many examples as possible, that would be fantastic, ma'am. Shall we get started? Okay.
Yes, and thank you for having me, Ganesh.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Ma'am, the first question that I have comes from your India Today conclave answer. And you mentioned that a critical factor to help us become a $7 trillion economy is the coordination between the state, center and the panchayat. Ma'am, could you please elaborate on that and help me understand what is this coordination issue and how are we solving for it?
See, as you know, the governance structure in India is divided by subjects as much as it is divided primarily between the central government, the state government, and of course the third layer. So there are subjects, as they refer to, which are entirely the central government's domain. And there are subjects which are entirely the state government's domains. And there are those which have both of them, they call it as concurrent subjects, where both the center and the states have a role to play. So even there, you know, some aspects of that subject will be dealt by the center and some other aspects will be done by the states, and the overlaps are kept to the minimum. Overlaps even within concurrent. So when we refer to the subjects, those can be fantastically done by any one center or the state, but even in those, nowadays very clearly, the interests of the states need to be given a voice, and in subjects which are states exclusively, even their local bodies, because they are also elected, they also have aspirations, they have people's representatives sitting in them, so they are answerable back to the voters. So the local self-government, or the third layer as we call urban local bodies, will also have a very decisive role to play to the limited area in which they operate. But of late, the one big glitch to this whole thing is being felt because local governments are not yet into that groove. Because eventually when you take a investment to some area, it is in that pocket where they have to be located. Many of the clearances will have to emanate from. And therefore, there is a need for the local bodies to understand why they have to be easy with people who are coming. Easy meaning well within the rules. Make it facilitative rather than obstructive. Because when you think you want to regulate them, control them, or bring more rules on them, you think you're having a hold, but that can frighten people away from your place. So it is that kind of a understanding and participating with the same intent that you need to have all the layers working together. That's why I had said that.
Could you help me understand this as an example, ma'am?
Any example will be, let us say, now you're having all these semiconductor chip manufacturing. Earlier, you had the Maruti, was it that the smallest car? Nano, which was going to be manufactured. And where they went, the state government and the local body did not make it easy for them. And at that point in time, before 2014 election, typical of Gujarat, which was business friendly, they said, no, you come over, we'll do it. And therefore, leaving the area where it was to be established in Bengal, Tata rushed to Sanand, and the Gujarat government, together with the local body there, enabled within, I am told, 10 days, the permissions, required clearances and everything, so that they could invest. Now, without looking at any ill will or malafide, why wouldn't that happen in Bengal? After all, the same investments by Tata was going to happen there.
Correct.
That insensitivity, or call it indifference, affected a big prospect of a business. Similar is the way in which you have private Indian investors going in for manufacturing semiconductors. It's no good repeating the example. Gujarat offered them favorable. Anyone could have offered. And that got proven by the fact that, would you imagine, Assam gave them the opportunity. You tend to think northeast states need a lot more pushing up to even be at par with many of the states so that industry can go in there. But what did Assam do differently from many other states, which in manufacturing, except for core industries like cement or something, you don't have any of those new technology-driven areas or IT-driven industry being there, but
Yes.
they drew them.
Yeah.
And a hard-nosed business house like Tata's found it possible to establish not a cement factory, not a integrated steel factory, but a very coveted semiconductor manufacturing place. So that is the point in which the state government, working together with local authorities, can do what you would otherwise in common sense think is impossible if they only move that fast and understanding the need.
Very
Solid two
interesting, ma'am.
examples.
Very interesting, ma'am. Ma'am, you mentioned about ease of doing business in Gujarat, and I've read this countless times. In fact, we made a case study on Gujarat, and we often found out that a lot of entrepreneurs have given a statement publicly saying that it is very easy for us to set up our factories in Gujarat versus in any other state. In fact, Ratan Tata ji himself gave out a statement that while many other states were offering Tata lands, it was only Gujarat that was not just offering, but also kept the land ready. And that was because of the land banking system in Gujarat. Man, why is it that we have not been able to scale the land banking system all across the country, ma'am? Why only Gujarat?
I wouldn't think you're right in that. There are many states which went ahead with land banking system, keeping certain demarcated areas ready for industry who will come forward and so on. But what is the distinction between what Gujarat's approach is as regards the others compared to Gujarat is consistently they're doing it.
Oh, okay.
Whereas in other states, take the example of Maharashtra. After all, the same bullet train was approved in Maharashtra as well to be one of the terminal points for it. The other terminal point in Gujarat, and it runs partly through Gujarat and comes partly through parts of northern Maharashtra and reach Mumbai.
Yeah.
It was approved.
Okay.
It was all cleared. Japanese came in a big way, both for the technology and for building the quality that is required for the track laying, for the bridges which are going to hold them and everything else. But what happened? With a change of government, that particular agreement or understanding was put in the back burner. So from the terminal point in Gujarat till almost the border of Maharashtra, the work was almost 2/3 complete. But they had to halt. They couldn't come further here because Maharashtra changed its approach to the project. Now, a project like that, which involves overseas investors, overseas technology, having agreed, and a central government which is working to get these overseas, because most of the overseas loans, when they come to the states for their projects, but the guarantor is the central government. Now, with all this done, suddenly when a change of government happens, and for you, for political considerations, you say it's not required for me, the impact it has on the overall approach to making investment in India attractive just falls flat. All right. Then again, with a change of government, that's getting restored. All right.
Okay.
Now, what happens to the overall completion of project?
It gets
What
delayed.
happens to that portion of the project which got delayed and its cost escalations?
Yeah.
What happens to the loans that you have to pay back? What happens to the timeline that this business is going to become revenue neutral, or you're making your ends meet and there is no loss per se, and you enter the stage where you can start making profit? Everything gets pushed. So when you say, you took the example of land bank alone, I take it as even the attitude towards development, attitude towards economic benefits, and the collaterals arising out of a positive approach towards economy as opposed to disruptive, for want of a better word, disruptive approach. Governments run in continuity. Economy has, it's like building, let us say, a dam or a mansion or a house or even a small kutir that you want to build. You lay the foundation and then start doing something. Even as you lay the foundation, if you say, no, I'm not laying it for one floor above, I just want the ground, although the whole understanding is you want the whole thing done completely, it affects everything that you think in terms of businesses. So states, not just for land bank, but understanding this principle that governments are in continuity and you cannot for such major things, take a decision which is completely going to turn upside down decisions taken earlier. Okay, so if that is the example that I've taken to explain, not just in land banks, but in general, governments being in continuity, you have to go ahead with some of the decisions, however much you may disapprove of it, because they have been already taken. So if this is about decisions, there's one other point which is necessary to add here. So not only the government in continuity, economy also runs in continuity.
Correct.
Unless you give it enough leeway, you cannot change a decision. You can always now pit a question against me or on me to answer, saying, after all, India has been a socialist economy all these years.
Yeah.
We've had public sector undertakings. We've had a lot of investment in running big companies by Government of India. Why would you therefore, because going by that economy is a continuity, government is a continuity argument, why would you want to go ahead with privatization? In 2021, I'm glad to say I was part of this government when we took a call on public sector enterprises policy, whereby we said it cannot any longer be the prerogative of government alone to be in one area of business. Every area of business should be available for private sector also to be in. All right, government will have to be in some sectors which are strategically important for us. One example of that is communication. And unless you have government services in these sectors, communication is one example, you will not be able to reach the border areas, provide telecom facilities there, because the private sector would say that area doesn't give me enough profit, so I won't go there. You need. Therefore, strategically, there can be 3 or 4 areas. And we said that'll be about only that much, where the government will also have to be present. It cannot be only government will be present. We want the efficiency of the private sector, so we opened it up. Now, therefore, even for that, 1991 is claimed to be the time when we had opening up of the Indian economy.
Yeah.
But even then, this privatization point was not really worked upon. It had to take its own time. But government here now under Prime Minister Modi said it's high time we have to open this up. And look at the result it has borne. Space sector, abuzz with private interests, investment, private talent, young people wanting to do a lot of work in launching satellites, either in the lower orbit or even the higher. It has brought in such a lot of synergy that India, even as it was standing as a leader in economy-driven space launches. Now, it's even more efficient.
Yeah.
You're able to send the smallest satellite to the lowest orbit and send a satellite which is just going to monitor your land resources, your water, the groundwater table, and so on. So you really made that sector vibrant. So that is the kind of change, even as you emphasize on continuity.
Very interesting, ma'am. So you're saying that governance should always take the front seat and politics should be at the back seat.
I would say governance, when it comes to questions of governance, when it comes to the question of economy, which is going to benefit everybody, the politics cannot be so disruptive. For instance, the UPA government brought in what was notoriously called retrospective taxation. It started to tax for years long before and called it a correction related measure. They had to take it back and ask people to pay up tax for periods which were long gone, although at that time in their business model they would have calculated the tax that they have to pay to the government per that prevailing rate at that time. But 10 years forward, you bring in a law which says a certain tax will have to be paid. Going backward in time, businesses and their business model can no longer take that on because they've costed themselves in such a way
Correct.
that for tax this much is given, for dividend this much is given if profit is earned, or else the cost of a product that they produce would be this much, is all predetermined, and based on that the businesses happen, goods are bought and sold and everything. Now
Yeah.
when you're bringing in a retrospective tax, who collects it from whom? Can they go back to searching each of the product consumer?
Correct.
So when I tell you this example of going backwards is always disruptive. So you're talking about governance, which is going to take the back seat and which is going to take the front seat? Is governance going to take the front seat and politics the one behind? I wouldn't look at it like that. I look at it as, so long as you're not disruptive and you're taking it forward, governance and politics go hand in hand. But the moment you decide that you have a different agenda, then not just going forward and giving the benefit to the people who are doing business and the citizens who are benefiting from business, you're bound to disrupt it negatively.
Very interesting, ma'am. Ma'am, the next question that I have actually comes from a very interesting chart which was put forth by a VC firm called Bloom Ventures, and they bifurcated the income tax payers in India. And this chart says that out of the 1.4 billion people, 74 million people filed for taxes and only 22 million people were actual taxpayers. So only 1.5% of India's population is the tax-paying population, whereas for China this is 10% and in the US it is 43%. Ma'am, why is our tax base so small?
Yes, it is small and the attempt is to make it wider, but taxation is such a matter that you really can't impose. You'll have to find out where that revenue lies so that you gradually bring them on board to say you should also be paying the tax. And therefore, in India particularly, it takes a very interesting dimension in that as long as you are earning more, you and your family are happy.
Yeah.
But the moment you are under the tax net, you think the government is regressive.
Correct.
There is a moral issue here. And therefore, it will have to take its time.
How do we solve this problem, ma'am?
Nudge the people is the only solution. You have to bring in civic consciousness. But above all, I think there's also an argument which the taxpayer has in his mind. And I think I would respect that. And that thought is, look, what do we get for the tax that we pay?
Exactly.
This has been a question, I think, now for 50 years.
Correct.
Because the taxpayer thinks, my road doesn't improve. I don't get proper drinking water in my house.
Yeah.
Three-phase electricity also was something very aspirational.
Yeah.
And then going to a proper hospital was a big thing. Private sector probably showed the way, saying better quality medical attention is available, but government hospitals were not really up to it. So you thought even if you were paying only 100 rupees towards tax, you thought my 100 rupees is important for me. And truly, it is important for everybody. But in that 100 rupees, I don't seem to get anything better.
No value for money.
So that anxiety still holds. Although Prime Minister Modi, I would generously credit him for one thing. Every rupee of the taxpayers' money, he is clear that he has to safeguard. He's clear that that cannot be frittered away. He's also clear that, like the way, once upon a time, Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi said, if I send 1 rupee to the beneficiary, he ends up getting only 15 paisa.
Correct.
The rest are all gone away. So by adopting technology, Prime Ministers ensure that that kind of leakage doesn't happen. 1 rupee sent is 1 rupee received.
So you're saying that once you start providing value for money to the people of India, they will understand the importance of paying taxes, or they'll at least value the fact that the government is giving them something in return for the tax that they're paying.
That's right.
Ma'am, this stat itself has another underlying insight. It says that out of the 22 million people who pay taxes also, only 4.5 million, as in Just 0.3% of our population pays 80% of our taxes. Ma'am, this indicates a very big gap between the rich and the poor. And I looked at the consumption levels, and even there I found some stats which were quite surprising. It says that the top 1% of India accounted for 45% of all flights. 1% of Indians took home 22% of India's income, and just 6.5% of the users were responsible for 44% of all UPI transactions. Ma'am, why is the gap between the rich and the poor increasing so much?
See, I wouldn't want to play it up as the gap increasing so much or whatever. I think there is a clear disconnect between the qualifications that you acquire, the education levels that we reach, and the kind of jobs that are available. And also equally, jobs and the skill sets that they require don't seem to matter in the higher education centers.
Correct.
So I've heard big companies tell me that a properly qualified engineer is recruited, but almost 6 months goes away in making him job fit.
Correct.
It's an investment for the company. And why should they have to do it? So the qualifications with which people ready themselves to face a job are still not really up to the industry's requirement. And many companies, particularly the medium and small ones, can't even afford to, invest in training them, because after 6 months of training, God knows where he'll go.
Correct.
So the considerations for industry are all now becoming so difficult that youth who think that they come out of universities are ready for jobs are unable to digest the fact that probably they are just not ready for jobs yet. But so, is this a government observation, and is this something which I'm going to leave it as it is? It's for them to face? No. We are trying to bridge this gap. We are trying to work with industry groups to say, why don't you tell us what is the kind of requirement you have? And in the curriculum that is being imparted, would you want to join hands, at least in the last 1 year, at least in the last 2 years of an engineering course, and say, look, give him such skills which are required for a forging company, metal forging company, or if it's an automobile shop floor, what would you want him to do? I know there are institutions like the Power Tools Corporation or Power Tools Institute or something, Government of India run,
okay,
which trains mechanical engineers, which trains people how to go about using instruments and be of relevance in the shop floor. But many more such are required, not for just the engineering. Now, the PM Vishwakarma Yojana that we've come up with is the one which says for people who are working with some bare minimum tools, in other words, working essentially with their hands, but probably using a minimum set of tools, they shall be proper training given. They will be given a kind of a stipend during the course, post which a 15,000 rupees worth of kit will be provided to them.
Okay.
And with that certification, today they can qualify for many of these big ticket jobs or assignments or contracts or subcontracts and so on. So, yeah, these are serious problems of people with inadequate skill sets aspiring for jobs.
Ma'am, I was reading something called the Skill India report, and what you mentioned is great for the bottom of the pyramid. But what I'm deeply concerned about is the middle of the pyramid, ma'am, because this Skill India report says that, just give me a second. Ma'am, the Skill India report says that more than 35% of our BTech students are unemployable, 30% of our MBA students are unemployable, 60% of our ITI students are unemployable, and more than 75% of our polytechnic students are unemployable. So, and ma'am, I have been the perfect witness to this entire transition, because 10 years back I was in college, and I am that student that you're talking about who thought after college I'll find a great job. But by the end of college, I realized that I do not know anything that is relevant to the industry today. And 10 years later, now I'm recruiting engineers and I'm seeing the same problem, ma'am. They're reading out of outdated textbooks, they're reading outdated concepts, and they do not know anything that is relevant for today's industry. So, ma'am, how are we solving this problem for the middle of the pyramid, which is our engineers and management students at least?
You've put your example forward. First thing I think, and this is not to say it's not part of government's own responsibility. The drive that an individual has to recognize that this is not going to work out for him and he has to find a different thing. As I say, get your mojo back. How do you get your mojo back? Once you identify that you don't seem to have your mojo in a particular area, and if you have to acquire it, what is it that you have to do? And once you identify, there are now online or offline courses available for you to be able to equip yourself better. That is one. And second, peer group learning is something which I think till my college days, we've all benefited from. Today, the world is so fast. We think each of our mobiles will be our peers. No way.
Yeah.
Peers are those who will be able to sit with you and put you the context in which you'll have to search for what is missing in you. Those kind of interactions are now becoming very few and far between. That's a second. And the third, it is true you quoted the ITIs. ITIs, unfortunately, are with the state governments. Many state governments in the last 30, 40 years have stopped investing in them. Why do you need to invest in them? Upgrade the tools, bring in newer tools with which you'll train the young person. And not just in the same repeated skills, there are newer areas in which we want people to come. Take the example of today, the expansion in renewable energy, particularly solar. Who are the young people who are laying the panels, who are setting the panels to a certain angle facing the sun? Who are those people? They're not high-end skilled workers. Where did they acquire? And today, to meet the ever-growing demand of solar energy, you have people who are servicing it. You have people who understand how the film has to be, maintained, cleaned, and how it has got to be placed, and so on. So that sector has found itself having to adjust very quickly to changing requirements. Similarly, for other sectors too, we need both the state and the central government together with private sector joining hands to say, I need good trained workforce or else I'm not going to be able to fill the gap. That's what happened during the COVID. I've been in touch with most of the industry during COVID when it was all shut up to make sure that the workers go back to where they want to go back, that they're not facing any hardship and so on. Similarly, after the lockdown was lifted, I was in touch with them again to say, are they coming back? You would be surprised to hear that many of them who booked the air tickets and got these workers earlier through some middle person were told, no, sorry, we are not coming back.
Why?
Because these workers found better bargaining with other areas. So they were able to choose to go to a different company, or with the skills that they acquired, they thought they'll be able to do something of their own in their own neighborhoods, in the villages. I heard at least 2 large industrialists tell me, and they belong to the south. They said, well, I'm not getting the same people who I had trained over the last several years. I'm going to have to invest to get newer fellows and train them. But well, now I've realized that how much ever you do, it might be better off for you to get local fellows and train them. So many of the southern districts of Tamil Nadu also which face labor-related problems because they don't have enough opportunities, were picked up and they were trained. And even they had a different level of satisfaction because now they're very closer to home, they're willing to work. So such a reset in the labor market is happening post-COVID.
So, ma'am, you're saying that the center and the state need to again coordinate on this and make sure that there's an industry academic connect such that the demand and supply both are matched, right? And the one question that I had, and
which
this is
had worked initially very well,
Okay.
and probably continues to work in the domain of startups, where we brought in these startups to join hands with the hubs which were set up in IIT like places, Indian Institute of Sciences like places. People came there, sat
Okay.
with them, and they helped them to understand where the problem is and where the solutions have got to come. And it has become a big catalytic center, these hubs.
Ma'am, the one question that I had, and this is purely out of curiosity, is that why don't we just put a restriction on the number of engineering colleges that are opening up? Because, ma'am, to be honest, in Pune, there are colleges that are being set up merely for the sake of making money. And the professors are incompetent. They are just great with marketing. And these students and parents who come from far away villages, they come to these colleges, and then there is a sales team which convinces them and sells them dreams that, we'll be able to get you a 4.5 lakh package, we'll be able to get you a 6.5 lakh package, and eventually after 4 years, after taking education loan also, these people are not able to find jobs. And this points towards a larger problem also, because today if we say that, we have 1.3 million engineers coming out, to a foreign investor, this seems like a gold mine. Because if 1.3 million engineers are coming out every year, that is great. Plus our labor costs are low. But when that person comes over here and actually sees the quality of our engineers, and he sees that most of our engineers are not engineers at all, that number one, dents the reputation of the country. And number two, all of these engineering colleges are not engineering colleges at all. They're just engineering colleges for the namesake. So again, with this center-state coordination, do we have something by which we can curb the expansion of these engineering institutes in such a way that whatever supply we have concrete supply, and the rest of the people can just find something else to do rather than being deceived by these engineering colleges in the name of great packages?
Absolutely, a very, very critical question and an issue which is definitely a festering issue. Many of them who borrow money and aim to have their children go high in their lives have been shattered.
Yeah.
And quality-less infrastructure, faculty-less programs have actually hurt the sector. I know the example that you cited of Pune is also applicable in many parts of southern states. Many engineering colleges are just lying there.
Correct.
Like huge concrete monsters with nothing in it.
True.
There has to certainly be a lot more vigilance in this matter and a lot more compliance of standards.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, the next question that I have is about GST. And ma'am, GST without a doubt has been a phenomenal success, because my Chacha ji is extremely envious of us because we don't have to face the same problems that he did during that time. And all the stakeholders that I spoke to, in fact, we made a video on GST and we asked people to comment as a business owner whether they were happy with GST or not. And most of the people said yes. But there's one category of stakeholder who's particularly not happy about GST, and those are the state governments like Tamil Nadu and Kerala. Now, before that, I just want to set the premise for this, just so that I have the understanding of how GST operates properly. If a t-shirt worth 100 rupees is produced in Tamil Nadu and it is sold in a state like UP, and if 20 rupees GST is collected on this t-shirt, 10 rupees goes to the center and 10 rupees goes to the state, right? And out of this 10 rupee that goes to the state, it goes to the consumer state, which is UP, and not producer state, which is Tamil Nadu, right? Governments like Tamil Nadu often argue that we've invested thousands of crores into setting up factories, building highways. Then why is it that our benefit of producing the goods are being passed on to other states where there are just more number of people out there to just consume the goods? So, ma'am, ma'am, why don't we just split? I know this is a very amateur question, ma'am, and I know that there are complex calculations in place, but why don't we just split the GST between the producer state and the consumer state equally?
How would that work out?
Out of the 20 rupees that is collected, 10 rupees goes to the center, 5 rupees goes to the producer state, and 5 rupees goes to the consumer state. Wouldn't that be enough to...
In a way, isn't that what is working? Because how do you know which product will be consumed? To what extent in a particular state? Maybe some states consume more of, let's say, hosiery products. Some other states may consume a lot more of metal goods. So for item wise, I'll have to, and some other states may consume one item this month and maybe not the next month. So you can't have a thumb rule and do it. It has to be on actual buying and selling. That is why this complex system was bought simply saying how much gets sold in a particular state. And that is why when GST was launched in 2017, manufacturing states were all unhappy, saying, I lose my advantage. I got so many industries to come to my place, set up the business. Now are you saying I won't get my share? No, they were compensated for it, so that they come on board, saying, okay, manufacturing states will be given something, and they agreed to some kind of a settlement, because now the emphasis or the principle of taxation moves on to the consumer. You take that measure.
Okay. Ma'am, so after this compensation is now applicable till 2026, right? The GST compensation?
No, it's over.
It was till 2022 and then it's over?
Yes, it's over.
Okay.
What you're getting till 26 is the compensation tax gets collected.
Okay.
It goes towards the payment of the principal and the interest on the borrowings that we did.
Okay.
During the lockdown, when nothing moved, no GST revenues were generated, but still states had to be given money, because how will they run otherwise?
Correct.
So money was borrowed and given to states on the understanding that it will have to be paid back by the compensation cess that we use.
Okay.
And that compensation cess was therefore extended beyond 22, strictly only to pay the compensations due that was to be paid. Assume that during the lockdown, if everything was normal, no lockdown, you would have earned as much as you gave as well.
Correct.
Without earning, you're giving because you borrowed. That borrowing has to be paid from where? It has to be paid from the same cess that gets collected. So, although till 22 we gave it to the states, now having extended it till 26, the collected money goes only for paying the borrowed amount.
Okay.
And it's servicing of the interest.
Okay. So until 2022, they were compensated. But after 2022, till 2026, whatever the state gave to the center during the times of COVID.
No. Whatever the GST Council borrowed to pay the states.
Okay. And that is now being collected in the form of?
The same cess is getting collected till 26.
Okay.
And the collected cess between 22 and 26 goes for paying that borrowed amount, which the GST Council borrowed to pay the states the compensation cess during the lockdown. See, between 2017 and 2022, states were given a 14% compensation.
Okay.
Meaning every state, based on the 2015-16 base year, would be growing at a particular level. Each state grew at its own level based on the trend of the earlier collection. But the GST at the time of launching agreed that it will be assumed that all states will grow in, say, at a 14% level. Now, if you actually grew only at 10% level, hardly any state grew at 10, but many of them grew at 7 or 8%. Best performers, the others performed less better, whatever be it. So if you actually grew at only 7 or 8%, the rest 7 or 6% would be given to you by the compensation cess which was levied on extra luxurious or sinful goods.
Okay.
So that money was collected in the name of compensation cess, and that was used to give the differential between actually what revenue was earned and the protected revenue, which is 14%, will be guaranteed to every state. So between 14 and 7, the gap was paid through the compensation cess.
Okay.
But that was only up to 22. And in the COVID year, because we couldn't collect anything, we borrowed money and kept that promise up. All right. So who's going to pay the borrowed money? After 22, we extended the collection. And with that money, we are paying back the borrowed money.
Understood, ma'am. Ma'am, this is very, very clear to us because from the mainstream media, what I understood is that there are states like Tamil Nadu which were protesting because they were saying that it's like penalizing the states for investing so much money into building factories when there are states which are just consuming things.
States is not building factories. What are you saying?
No, what they're saying is that we put in so much efforts and
Every
thousands of
state
crores
has
into
done
building
it.
highways, but all of our efforts are being penalized because our revenue is going to the consumer state. That was the narrative, so I just wanted to ask you that question. Okay. Ma'am, the next question that I have is about this, again, north-south divide that's out there, and I want you to clarify this just like you did for GST. And this is coming from the divisible pool of taxes. By the way, guys, for those who don't know, this is just for the audience. If the center collects 1,000 crores, 41% of it in 2024 goes to all the states. So 1.8% might go to Kerala, 6% will go to Maharashtra, and so on and so forth. And the Finance Commission decides which state will get how much percent. And this pool right now is about 12 lakh crores, right, ma'am? Is that correct? Okay. Ma'am, here's where the Finance Minister of Kerala, K.N. Balgopal, argues. He says that Kerala gets only 21 rupees against every 100 rupee that Kerala collects. But for UP, this number is 46 out of 100. And for Bihar, it's drastically high. Bihar gets 70 rupees out of the 100 rupee that it collects. And here's where the north-south divide narrative comes into play, ma'am. So, ma'am, what is the logic behind dividing this pool of money between different states? And why is there such a drastic difference?
First of all, I think this narrative is somewhat distorted.
Okay.
I'm not coming into saying the numbers are distorted. I'm not even. I'm saying the principle on the basis of which this is being put out is absolutely distorted.
Okay.
I'll start from an example and I'll elaborate. Let's take Kerala. Let's take Tamil Nadu. Let's take Karnataka. If actually the total amount of revenue or taxation that you pay is the principle on the basis of which tax has to be given back to you, Kochi in Kerala would take away everything that is collected.
Yeah.
All right? Kochi, which benefits from having one of the world's best ports, which is a national port, in which Government of India's money goes in. That port is built, maintained, run, modernized, upkeep, everything is with the center. Look at the way in which complexity gets into the argument.
Yeah.
All right. Now, Kochi, therefore, also has a airport to which the Central Civil Aviation Ministry spends a lot. Okay. Kochi also has one of the biggest centers of Navy, for which central government exclusively spends money. Now, all of them have a ripple effect on the economy Kochi.